Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be taking a look at Carlos Ghosn
Oh, yeah.
and asking the question, is he a visionary or a con artist? I mean, this is somebody who, brought Nissan back from the brink,
Yeah.
created one of the world's biggest auto alliances.
Right.
But then you have, these allegations of misconduct,
Yeah.
a dramatic arrest, that wild escape from Japan.
Unbelievable.
So we're gonna try to unpack all of this with the help of our expert here.
Absolutely.
And really kind of dissect Ghosn's motives and actions, and ultimately his legacy. To try to answer this question, grifter or gifted.
Yeah, it's a question that has plagued the business world for some time now. And I think what's really fascinating about Ghosn's story is how much his early career kind of foreshadows all this controversy that would later engulf him. I mean, he wasn't always this, titan of the auto industry. He started out at Michelin, then he moved on to Renault. And it was there where his really aggressive cost-cutting strategies earned him the nickname Le Cost Killer.
Le Cost Killer.
Yes.
Wow. That's intense.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of makes you think, like, what were the long-term consequences
Yeah.
of those strategies? Did it come back to haunt him?
That's a great question, and it's one that we should definitely keep in mind
Yeah.
as we unpack his approach to, to business in general. Because when he took charge of Nissan in 1999, the company was drowning in debt. I mean, it was like,
On the verge of bankruptcy.
wow.
And you know what was his solution?
What was it?
More cost cutting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he slashed jobs, he closed factories, restructured operations.
And it worked. I mean, Nissan did experience a pretty dramatic turnaround.
Yeah, and it's that success that kind of blinds us, I think, to
Wow.
what's really going on underneath.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was effective. But you have to wonder about the impact.
On the
Yeah.
culture of the company, right?
Like, did they foster a culture of fear?
Yeah. Yeah. Did they create an environment where dissent was stifled, potentially paving the way for, unethical behavior
Right.
to go unchecked?
It's such a classic story of, like, a business titan, right?
Yeah.
Like an outsider who comes in, shakes things up, achieves this phenomenal success. But, I mean, success can be blinding. And sometimes that blinding light, reveals some pretty dark shadows.
Exactly. And in Ghosn's case, those shadows really emerged in 2018 when Nissan launched this internal investigation that was spurred by a whistleblower.
And what kind of misconduct are we talking about here?
Well, we're talking about underreporting his income by millions of dollars over several years,
Wow.
using company funds for personal gain, shifting personal losses onto the company books, basically using his position for personal enrichment.
That sounds pretty damning.
Yeah, and it is.
But there is another side to this story, right?
That's right.
So Ghosn and his supporters, they claimed that this was all a setup, a clinically planned hatchet job to oust him and shift the balance of power
Right.
within this Renault-Nissan-Mitsubishi alliance.
Exactly. And to understand that argument, we need to look at the power dynamics
Yeah.
within the alliance. So Renault held a 43% stake in Nissan, while Nissan only had a 15% stake in Renault. And so as Nissan began to grow faster than Renault in terms of production, this unequal partnership, creates some tension. And some sources close to Ghosn, they allege that his removal was actually orchestrated to try to reassert control and limit French influence.
So you have Nissan claiming corporate wrongdoing. You have Ghosn and his supporters alleging this conspiracy. It's
Yeah.
kind of a classic he said, she said situation. Where do we even begin to unravel this?
No, I think it requires a very careful examination of the evidence and a consideration of the motivations of all the parties involved. I think it's also crucial to understand the cultural context here, particularly the intricacies of the Japanese legal system.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the Japanese legal system is known for its high conviction rate and a prosecutorial style. That can be quite different from what we're used to in the West.
Okay.
It's a system that places a strong emphasis on confessions. And it can be quite opaque to outsiders.
Okay.
So this context is crucial to understanding Ghosn's subsequent actions and the global reaction to his case.
Right. And this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because now we're not just talking about a corporate scandal. We're talking about international intrigue, differing legal systems, and a whole lot of unanswered questions.
Absolutely.
Right. And remember, this wasn't just like some boardroom drama.
Yeah.
This was a situation with global implications.
Yes.
The French government, which had a stake in Renault, that became very concerned about the stability
Yeah.
of the alliance
Yeah.
and the potential impact on their economy.
Right.
So the stakes were incredibly high.
Yeah.
And in the midst of all of this, Ghosn is arrested in Japan. In November of 2018, he's ousted from both Nissan and Mitsubishi. His reputation is in tatters. But the story doesn't end there.
Of course not.
Right? It takes a turn that is straight out of a Hollywood thriller.
Yeah.
He escapes.
He does.
In December of 2019, while under strict house arrest in Japan, awaiting trial, he pulls off this incredibly audacious escape.
I know.
Flees the country in a meticulously planned operation.
It's crazy.
I mean, it's almost unbelievable.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this escape.
Okay.
I mean, how did you manage to pull this off?
So, reportedly, he hid in a large music equipment case.
What?
Yeah. He was transported to an airport and then flown out of Japan via Turkey, eventually landing in Lebanon, which conveniently has no extradition treaty with Japan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a move that seems almost too daring, too brazen. For like a high-profile CEO,
Right.
What does that tell us about his mindset at the time?
Well, I think it speaks to his desperation, his belief that he couldn't get a fair trial in Japan. The operation itself involved a man named Michael Taylor, who is a former U.S. Army Special Forces veteran with experience in extraction operations. And Taylor had quite a reputation.
Really?
Yeah, there were profiles on him. That indicated he had completed nearly a dozen escapes
Wow.
prior to Ghosn's, costing anywhere from $20,000 to $2 million each.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so clearly Ghosn was willing to go to extraordinary lengths to escape what he perceived as a rigged system.
Yeah, and he was very vocal
Yeah.
about his reasons for fleeing.
He was.
Right, he claimed he was a hostage in Japan, facing a rigged justice system. He felt he had no choice but to escape.
Right. He described being subjected to these long interrogations, denied contact with his wife, and, basically felt that he wouldn't receive a fair trial in Japan.
So we're back to this question of conflicting narratives. Is Ghosn a victim of a system that was determined to take him down, or is this just a convenient excuse to avoid accountability for his actions?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
And it's one that we'll continue to grapple with as we delve deeper into the allegations against Ghosn, the evidence presented, and the complexities of the Japanese legal system.
Okay, so we're going to continue this deep dive in just a moment. Okay, so we left off with Carlos Ghosn, this global CEO, hiding in a box to escape what he sees as an unfair legal system.
Right.
Which I think really complicates this question of, grifter or gifted.
Yeah, definitely.
Like if he was innocent, why run? But if he was guilty, how did he get away with it for so long?
That's a great point.
It's a real head scratcher.
And we can't forget that while Ghosn was orchestrating this escape, Japanese prosecutors were building their case against him. They were accusing him of diverting millions from Nissan for personal use.
Wow.
Including these lavish mansions in Beirut and Brazil.
So, it sounds like classic corporate greed, right?
Yeah.
But then you have Ghosn insisting that he wants a trial to clear his name.
Yeah. He maintains that the charges are fabricated. Part of that hatchet job we talked about earlier.
Right.
That he believes it was a way to curb French influence over Nissan.
It's a bold claim, especially given, his decision to flee.
Exactly right. It's like he's trying to control the narrative, right? By claiming he's the victim.
Yeah.
But fleeing from trial doesn't exactly scream innocent.
No, it doesn't.
But then his supporters will counter that and say, well, he fled because he believed he couldn't get a fair trial in Japan.
Right.
And they point to Japan's high conviction rate and what they see as a system that can be harsh on defendants, especially foreigners.
And of course, we have those sources who were close to Ghosn,
Yeah.
claiming this whole thing was a planned maneuver
Yeah.
to, shift the power balance within the alliance.
They're basically painting him as the victim of this corporate conspiracy rather than a perpetrator of financial crimes.
It makes you wonder, was this an elaborate setup from the beginning? But on the other side, you have Nissan and the Japanese authorities, who are adamant that Ghosn is guilty of serious financial misconduct. They say that he abused his position for personal gain and fled to avoid consequences.
Right.
So who do we believe?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think it's important to remember that Greg Kelly, a Nissan executive, accused of aiding Ghosn, was convicted in 2023. On one count of misreporting financial information. It was a lesser charge than initially sought by prosecutors. But it does suggest that some level of wrongdoing occurred under Ghosn's watch.
So there's evidence pointing in both directions.
Right.
It's this tangled web of accusations and conflicting narratives, international legal complexities. I mean, it's difficult to say for certain what really happened.
Yeah, I think these high-profile corporate scandals, they're rarely black and white. There are multiple perspectives, conflicting evidence, and it's up to each individual to weigh the facts and decide what they believe.
It's a reminder that things aren't always as they seem. There's often more to the story than meets the eye. And in Ghosn's case, the story keeps unfolding.
It does.
Right, because in 2022, French authorities issued an arrest warrant for Ghosn based on this investigation into potential misuse of company funds during his time at Renault.
Wow.
So even though he's living freely in Lebanon, he's not out of the woods yet.
He's not in the clear.
Yeah. It's a situation that could drag on for years, impacting not just Ghosn, but the companies he led.
Right.
You know, the Renault-Nissan-Mitsubishi alliance was significantly weakened by this whole affair.
Yeah, they're trying to move forward. But the damage is done. There's a lingering sense of distrust, a reminder of how quickly things can fall apart, even for a seemingly invincible business titan.
Right. I mean, it's a cautionary tale, I think, about the fragility of global alliances and the ripple effects of corporate misconduct.
Yeah.
But maybe even more importantly, it makes us ask, you know, how do we separate the hero from the villain?
Yeah.
When charisma and controversy collide? It's a question that lingers. As we examine Ghosn's legacy, was he a brilliant visionary who revolutionized the auto industry? Or was he a cunning operator who crossed the line?
Or maybe, as is often the case, a bit of both. His story reminds us that success can be seductive, and even the most brilliant minds can be tempted by power and wealth.
It's a fascinating and complex case that really challenges our assumptions about leadership and success and accountability.
It really does.
And it leaves us with this lingering question. How do we reconcile these two sides of Carlos Ghosn?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Like this brilliant cost-cutter reviving Nissan, but then, you know, the accused executive fleeing justice in a musical instrument case.
Right. I mean, it's the question that I think continues to fascinate people. Was he a visionary leader driven to these desperate measures? Or was there always a darker side to his ambition? Was he ultimately a master manipulator who flew a little too close to the sun?
It's interesting you say that because it makes me think about Icarus, right? He soared to these incredible heights with his wax wings. But ultimately, his ambition was his downfall. Could we say the same about Ghosn?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are definitely parallels. You know, in Ghosn's case, we see this man who achieved incredible success, but that success came at a cost. You know, he made ruthless decisions, alienated potential allies, and, you know, perhaps in his pursuit of power and profit, he lost sight of those ethical boundaries.
And I think it also raises these bigger questions, not just about Ghosn, but, you know, about corporate culture and the global nature of business and the challenges of achieving justice in a world where power and influence can often trump fairness and accountability.
You're absolutely right. I mean, Ghosn's story is a microcosm of these larger issues. You know, it forces us to confront these uncomfortable truths about the systems we've created and the individuals who operate within them.
So where does that leave us? What can we learn from this whole saga?
Yeah, I think one of the key takeaways is the importance of critical thinking. You know, we need to be skeptical of those who present themselves as saviors or villains, those who promise these quick fixes and easy solutions.
Right.
You know, we need to look beyond the surface, examine the evidence, question the motivations of those in power.
It's about understanding that things are rarely black and white.
Right.
That there are multiple perspectives, and truth can be elusive, especially in a world where information is constantly being, you know, spun and manipulated.
Exactly. We need to develop those skills to discern fact from fiction, to see through the hype and the carefully crafted public image. And maybe most importantly, we need to remember that no one, regardless of their wealth, their power, or their status, is above the law.
It's a reminder that accountability matters.
Yes.
That actions have consequences. And justice, while often elusive, is worth fighting for.
It is.
You know, Ghosn's story with its twists and turns, its triumphs and downfalls, it really serves as a cautionary tale. It's a reminder that the pursuit of success, while admirable, should never come at the expense of ethical behavior and respect for the law.
Well said.
So as always, it's up to you, our listeners, to draw your own conclusions. Was Carlos Ghosn a brilliant leader or a master manipulator?
A visionary or a con artist?
Did his ambition drive him to greatness, or lead him down a path of destruction.
We've presented you with the facts, the analysis, and the different perspectives. Now it's your turn to decide.
Grifter or gifted?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back next time with another captivating story. Another figure who challenges our assumptions and makes us question everything we thought we knew. Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.